Okay, good morning everyone. We're going to get going this morning. This is our CAUTA training course. This is communicating and connecting. This is Module 6 in our curriculum training for the CAUTA program. I am Tammy Miller and I am with Community and Cultural Outreach. And so we're happy for you guys to be here today and to be joining us online. Before I actually get going with the training, I am going to introduce a young lady by the name of Kendra Sweet. Kendra is with the Cherokee Phoenix, and she is going to come and talk to you guys for just a minute about some of the services that they have to offer.
All right, going along with the title of today's meeting, Communicating and Connecting, I just thought today would be a great opportunity to remind our participants and our citizens of the Cherokee Phoenix. We have thousands of subscribers, and it's a great way to stay up to date with Cherokee events and affairs. And it's a great way to expand your community. So for those in the at-large communities that would like to expand, or Cherokee business owners that would like to promote their services or products, the Cherokee Phoenix is a great opportunity to do that. You can subscribe today at www.cherokeephoenix.org. And if you're interested in any of our advertising options, which include print, web, newsletter, and radio, you can contact me, Kendra Sweet, at Kendra-Sweet at Cherokee.org. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kendra, for coming today and letting us know that wonderful information. We appreciate having you. Okay, so we are going to get going with our CAUTA curriculum this morning. Chris, I'm going to hand you this mic. We're not going to need it for a little while, but and it is live and on. Okay, and as I stated earlier, our training today is on communicating and connecting. Our workshop objectives today, we're going to identify two main benefits of having a well-developed communications plan for your community organization. We're going to identify 4 ways that your organization can use to keep in touch by communicating regularly with your community members. We're going to identify characteristics and demonstrate how to make a shopping cart speech. We're going to explain how to make an effective brief presentation, which is a 5 to 10 minutes, and it's going to be on behalf of your organization to a gathered group in a meeting. And the last thing, we're going to identify 3 types of written communication that your organization can use to communicate effectively about your organization and its activities to the public. Now guys, like I said before, this is very open, so if you have any questions while we're going through this, just, raise your hand, interrupt me, and we're happy to stop and answer that question. Or if you just want to point something out maybe that your organization has done in the past, we would love to hear those comments. So please just stop us anytime you would like. Part 1 is planning communications. Okay, so just a little point here. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound if there's no one there to hear it? I kind of like that. How can a community organization work for and with a community if no one knows they're there? How do we let them know that you're out there? Do you sometimes feel like this picture, like you're out in the desert all alone, that you're just all alone working for your community? So basically, we're gonna learn today how you're gonna let them know that you are out there and you're not in it all alone. All right, a communications plan for a community organization. It maps out communications planned over time, and typically we're talking about a year. We're talking about a year's plan. Now, if you get into a strategic plan, you may go out 3 to 5 years, but we're talking right now about just a planning over about a year's time. Identifies who is responsible for each part of the plan. The benefits to this, you're going to help the organization focus the message going out, and it's to help achieve a specific purpose. You're likely to increase your volunteer helpers, and you're going to help with your fundraising proceeds. And the little comment down here, how will they know to come if you don't tell them about it? And you know, we've talked about that many times. If you don't get the word out about your fundraising, about the events that you're having, no one knows to come. So that's just very, very important. You have to get the word out. A communications plan should identify the following: when messages will be needed, and that's for all major events, methods that will be used to convey those messages, who's responsible for each message, how much budget is allocated for these communications, and methods that can be used for evaluating the effectiveness of the communications sent out. So basically, just in asking a few questions here, how many of you actually have an advertising budget set aside? Just by raise of hands, show of hands. So not too many. Okay, so right now, what are you doing? Are you just creating flyers that announce your events? So the most that's Chris, the microphone, if you don't mind. You have a sign. That's a really good thing. A community sign. Uh-huh.
That we can tap into through the school.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I hate these. And the other one is the library sign that we just got, thanks to you all at CATA. And then we do flyers. Have the monthly paper. We make announcements at the legislative breakfast each month.
Okay.
So
Very good suggestions. And just pass the mic behind you there. What do you guys do to announce your events?
By word of mouth and through flyers.
Word of mouth and flyers. That's very, very good. Does anybody use social media for announcements? Something we highly recommend is that you start using websites, Facebook for your organization. Thank you, Chris. That really helps get the word out. People begin to start watching the social media page, or they get, sometimes they get an alert when you're having an event. So that's just a really good form to kind of help you get your word out. And basically, that's what we just did. We just talked about some ways that you can get the word out to your community, and we talked about, now, the least expensive way is some of the things you just talked about. There's really no cost at all. When you're doing social media, there's no cost. There might be a cost to the flyer. But do any of you actually put advertisements in the newspaper or anything like that?
we have done that occasionally. We set notices to the paper. Problem is, the paper has a certain procedure, and a lot of times
Right.
we get that to the last moment.
Correct. That's correct. And what she said was that, there are certain time frames for a newspaper or something like that. So that's very important to know that. But those are very good methods. And again, we always want to look at what the least expensive method is, but also the most successful way to get your word out. So those are all just very, very good. Okay, now steps in developing a communications plan. First, you want to develop some objectives about your communications plan. What is your objective? What are you trying to get the word out there on? So first, you do want to develop that objective. You want to plan specific communication activities. So you actually have activities to get the word out to your community. So you want to plan that. Everybody needs to agree on the target audience. Who is it that you're trying to get the word to? So, it might be youth. You might be trying to get the word out to the youth. You might be trying to get the word out to volunteers. You might be trying to get the word out about fundraising. So you really need to have a plan of communication, and you need to agree on the target audience for that specific event. You need to develop clear, concise, consistent messages. So, you need to be very clear in that message. When is the event? what time, what place, everything in a brief communication that you need to get the word out there. If you do a flyer but you forget to put the place that the event's going to happen, then you're not really getting the clear, concise, consistent message out there. You need to identify who is responsible for getting this done. So when you're having your board meeting and you're planning this, you need to decide what individual is going to do this. We don't just assume that we know who's going to do it, we assign it. And we make sure that it's okay with that person when we assign it, that they're on board for doing this communication. You need to estimate a time frame for communication about each major event. So basically, again, the time frame is very important. You don't want to get the word out the day before an event because people may have plans. You don't want to tell someone too far in advance because they may forget. So you need to, you need to estimate the time frame to communicate about your event. You need to plan adequate resources. Again, we need to talk about what resources it's going to take, the budget, the things like that, to advertise. So, you need to plan those adequate resources in advance. And then you need to evaluate the effectiveness. After you've tried something, after you've tried an advertisement, after you've tried a flyer, after the event, you need to evaluate it. Well, how well did that event do? Did we have a good turnout? Was our communications plan successful? So those are all things that are just really important. You always need to evaluate after the event the effectiveness of the entire event, but of the communications plan. Because if you sent out a flyer and that wasn't successful, you need to decide what are we going to do next time. So those are just steps to develop that communications plan. Do we have any questions so far from anyone? Okay. Ways and means. You're going to find methods of communicating that work for your organization. Again, every organization is different. Every community is different. So basically, each of you have to figure out what is the method of communicating that works best for your organization. Again, we're talking about the budget. If the budget is a major issue, think of how your group can get the most bang for the buck. And again, I think you guys have already talked about ways that you can get the word out that are, doesn't really hit the budget so hard. So budget, you always have to think about that. Plan in advance to have other people help out or use the media. We talked about the newspaper. There's also radio. Tahlequah has a radio station. We're fortunate right here, and I think they're pretty good to put announcements out there, but I'm sure they have deadlines. You probably have to let them know, a couple of weeks in advance. Kendra was here with the Cherokee Phoenix. They have deadlines. I think you have to get it to them about a month in advance. But the Phoenix is very good to put community events in the paper, but again, they only send the paper out once a month. So you have to think about the time frame for radio and for newspapers and things like that. So always keep that in mind. I'm sure that each of you have a local paper. Our local paper, the deadline, I believe, is Monday by noon. So, a lot of our organizations know that, and if they have an event, they know that they have to get that to them by noon on Monday. So just be aware that if you are going to use newspaper or radio, that there's probably a deadline for you to get that advertisement to them. You can find ways if you work at it. And I know that all of you guys are really good at just searching out the ways to communicate. All right, now we're talking about being strategic. A strategic plan has a time frame and someone assigned to be responsible. Again, a strategic plan, we're talking about a little bit longer time frame. And so it's always good to have someone in your organization that's looking at down the road. It does tend to help things get done more reliably when you have someone assigned to that. if there's a plan, people will start asking how it's going, and then things actually do get done. So you got to think of ways to piggyback your message at your community gatherings. So every time you're at a community gathering, be sure and announce the next event that you have coming up. Take that opportunity when you have that crowd to make that announcement, the next event, so that people hear that and know. Also, just basically, if there's a crowd gathered somewhere, if you just happen to be at another event, maybe it's not your event, ask. I'm sure that whatever event you're at, they may allow you just 1 or 2 minutes to stand up and announce, we've got a fundraising event coming up next month. We'd love to invite everyone. So just take every opportunity that you have to get your word out, to get your communication out. So if there's a big crowd gathered for any reason, see if you can make an announcement and tell them about your events, or if you can write it down and let their MC announce it. So any questions so far? All right, we're going to work on part 2, developing a coherent message. How do you get people to help? And this is something I'm going to bring them in on, Chris, so if you don't mind to bring the mic again. How do you get people to help? How do you convince them to take that plunge? It's a lot of work, isn't it, trying to get volunteers and trying to get people to help. So, Mamie, how do you guys try to get people involved and try to get them to help you?
I haven't been doing a very good job lately. We have that legislative breakfast. I think helps us a lot.
The
And
legislative breakfast.
We can one-on-one there. We can, and just any meeting we attend, we can do that. But we've not been good at getting people to help. I mean, our Library Friends is a small organization, and so I need this class.
Okay, good deal. Anything, Blaze, that you have to add? How do you get people to help?
Well, I'm going to say persistence, because Mamie does persistence really well. She develops connections. And a lot of times people say no at first. And so she's shown us that you just keep going back. Maybe you go back a different way. Maybe you ask them the first time they didn't feel like they could do something. Well, you go back and another time and you say, can you do this? And you just you develop a connection, and either you wear them down or they start to see the value of helping you, the value to them. And sometimes that's the point you have to take. You have to point out the value to them. Like, in a lot of communities, it's hard sometimes to get your youth to help. Well, right now, one way we can show value to them is that this counts, a lot of things that we do count as community service. And they can count that as community service. So that's a value to them. And once we get them started, what we found out when we had a lot of our students help us move the library 5 years ago, and you could hear them in the library. Wow, I didn't know they had that. So you walk into our library, and there's a lot of people in there usually that you wouldn't, especially young people, that you wouldn't expect to be in there. And we try to point out, this was, back then it wasn't community service. We hadn't started that tact. They just helped because that was, something they wanted to do.
Very good, very good. You want to come down here to Carla? So, Miss Carla, how do you guys get people to help?
Generally, we just keep asking. And a lot of time, if they're not interested in helping with one thing, they'll be interested in helping with something else. Because we have to find what each person is interested in. Some people don't like to deal with kids, some people don't like to deal with reading, So finding what each person, we have one that likes to cook, so anytime we have any cooking things, she'll help with that, so.
Very good. Very good. So what I just keep hearing over and over is persistent. You just continue to ask them. And once you find the thing that that person is good at, then you understand and you know. And so that's very, very good. So we just have to convince people to take that plunge. Some people are shy. They are just afraid, but once they get involved, and again, the mission, getting them involved in the mission and the purpose of your organization is vitally important. And if they understand that mission, then you have people that really do want to jump on board and help you. So, people will only help you if they want to, but how do we make them want to help you? So that's just a very good point. Again, we're going to start with your mission. The mission is just the most important part, the most important piece for them to understand. And people will help you if they support your organization's mission and your goal. So the big message, your organization's mission or goal, that's the big message. The major purpose of the communications plan is to be sure that as many people as possible in your community know what your mission and your goal is. It's just vitally important. Tell people how they can help. Ask them. Continue to ask them. You would be surprised how many people would be willing to help, but no one has ever asked them. So, always, don't be afraid, but just always tell people how they can help you. And just the small messages, details about the kind of help that you need. Where people should come, you need to, again, be sure that you let them know the time, the date, and the place. If they don't know where to come or when to come, then they're not going to be there. So be sure just this little small messages of getting the details out to them. All right, stop and do. What is the big message about your organization? So basically, Chris, again, briefly, Carla, tell me what the goal is for the Stillwell Public Library Friends.
To promote the library and to help with getting those items that they need.
Okay, so to promote the library, that's the big message. Okay, Blaze, do you want to speak on your big message?
Overall, when people ask me this question, I say we are advocates for the library
Very good.
to the community.
Very good.
So, and we have a formal mission statement, but that, to me, just to say we're advocates, because most people understand what advocates are.
Correct. Very
And
good.
it just makes it easier to understand. If we say one community, one library, one vision, well, it takes a while.
Yes. Yeah, very good. Okay, and pass it on back there, Chris. What's your goal, your big message?
Is to try to get more people involved.
Very good for your community. Yes. That's the major thing. When you have a community building, a community organization, you just want to get people involved. You want to get the big message out. So those are very good. Be able to answer general questions about your organization whenever the topic comes up. Just like today, I put you ladies on the spot. But you should always be able to do that, in just a moment's notice. Just tell the big message, just shortly, briefly, but be able to communicate. That's what we're about. So you always need to just be able to answer those general questions. And one thing you might do in your organization is just brainstorm some ideas, some ways to help your members in practicing that. It might seem silly, but it's really not. Just practice ways of getting the message out. Some people are shy, but you see somebody in Walmart, it's a good idea to get your message out about your community, because you may come across someone that doesn't know about your mission or your goal. So that's always a good idea. All right, occasions and spokespersons. You need to always recognize the occasions, again, like group gatherings that we've talked about, that offer opportunities for you to get the word out about your organization. So again, we talked about that a little bit before. Just any occasion that you have, you need to have one spokesperson assigned, maybe two, that can just give a brief description and go to that and tell them about your organization and any upcoming events that you may have. You need to be able to recruit as many helpers as possible to spread your word. All right, we're moving right along. Part 3 on spoken communications. The shopping cart speech. We've done a training before on an elevator speech. Well, now we're going to do one on a shopping cart speech. This is just a brief, 1 minute or less message that you can make in time, that, like if you were in the line at Walmart, you just briefly, 1 minute or less, want to tell them about your organization. So you need to know the big message again. We've talked about that. Find a way to fit the message into a normal conversation. So you need to be able just to bring it up in a normal conversation that you're having there. And you need to add a positive personal comment. So add something that you personally have, you know, something personal that helps you stay part of your organization. And that may get them involved in it. So basically, we're going to take just another moment and we're going to try a shopping cart speech. So Chris, if you would. Mamie, do you mind to start? I want you to give me a 1 minute shopping cart speech.
I'm a friend of the library, and we're having adult reading groups. We assign a book we give everyone the same book, and then we have a professor or someone knowledgeable about that book come and speak with us about it and tell us about the author and tell us, and we've all read it, so we can have our own questions. So that's the one thing we're doing this fall.
Very good. Okay. Blaze, I'm getting you mixed up. 1 minute shopping cart speech.
Okay, I'm a friend of the library at Hulbert, and our big mission is to be an advocate for the library and its activities and programs to the community. So depending on the person I'm talking to, if they have children, I say, you know, we have a wonderful children's program, and they can have their own library card. They can come in and check out their own books, you know, that we may not have over in the school library. But we also have, as Mamie said, the adult program that we're developing. So we want to get everybody involved in reading because that makes us better people in our community.
Very good, very good. Pass it on back, Chris.
I am just a member of our Cherokee community, and we don't have a lot there, so we just usually have our monthly meetings, and we have a group once a month for the kids, and then we just plan what we have planned for, like our wrestling every month. That makes our electric bill, pays our electric bill.
So you do wrestling? You have wrestling at your building?
Every month,
I'm
yeah.
acting like I'm the other person at the end of the shopping cart. So you have wrestling?
Yes.
Well, how interesting. Is that fun?
Yes, the
Okay.
kids like it.
The kids really like
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have concessions or anything?
Yes, we have concession, and it costs $5 at the door, I think, and maybe $2 for kids. And then the manager of the wrestling gets 60%, and we get 40
Very
at the
good.
door, and
Very
we get
good.
all the concession, and that's how we pay our electric bill.
Very good.
Other than that, that's about it we got going on down there.
Okay. Now, do you rent your building out?
Yes, we
Yeah.
rent it out quite a bit,
Okay.
and that helps out a lot.
Well, good. All right. Thank you. All right, Chris, come on down to the front. 1 minute shopping cart.
Yes, I like fresh produce too. I don't usually like tomatoes that are bought from the store, but we do have a farmer's market down at the library on Wednesdays, and we're downtown on Saturdays now. And we have a great Hmong vendor, and he has eggplants and the little Thai potatoes, and it's just wonderful. And we also have a senior nutrition program that you can get, and then we can also take EBIT card.
Very good. Okay, guys, so that was just a quick try at a little shopping cart speech. Like I said, you never know when you're going to run into somebody at the grocery store or at a store, and you want to take that opportunity to let them know what it is you're doing and what the events that you have coming up. You would be surprised at the people that don't know. And so you always want to take the opportunity. And so, you guys try that sometime at your board meetings. Just sit down and practice a little shopping cart speech. And it would really help your organization out just to get the word out. Okay, moving on. Now the brief presentation, that is just a little bit longer presentation. The definition, that's going to be about a 5 to 10 minute speech made to a group of people gathered for a meeting. So maybe you need to speak to the Kiwanis. Maybe you need to speak to someone at the Chamber of Commerce. So you want to have a little bit more than a shopping cart speech. You would want to have more of a brief presentation ready. We do recommend that you keep that 5 to 10 minutes and then maybe allow a few minutes to answer questions. But you don't want to get real lengthy in those things because, if you're at somebody else's gathering, they have a mission and a purpose for their event. So you just want to keep that brief. You need to plan what you want to say to this group. So it needs to actually be a planned, probably have something written down for this presentation. And you want to look at the group, who it is that you're going to talk to. You want to look at you want to match their purposes with your organization. So really you need to think about this presentation that you're going to make at this gathering. Who is the audience? What are their needs? What are their desires? And what are their interests? So it's just very important that you think about that as you're going up in front of a gathered group of people. What's the goal of your message? What are you trying to convey? What are you trying to tell them? So again, we recommend that this kind of be a written speech. You can memorize it, but at the same time, really put some thought and some effort into what it is that you're wanting to convey. What do you want them to understand? And, you really want them to know what your presentation is about. So actually, that would be the brief presentation. You want to plan on how you're going to give the presentation again. You'll need an opening. You need an opening strategy or a hook. So you want a hook to grab them in, to get them interested right away. They want to hear about your organization. Maybe you're a food pantry. So the hook is you want to let them know how many families are going hungry, how many families you're feeding. So have a hook right away to grab them in your opening statement. Then you would want to go on to your main content. Just focus on a few main ideas about your organization. You want to tell those listeners why they should be interested in what your organization is doing. And again, maybe 3 to 6 minutes on that main content. So that's really important. You're just looking at maybe 1 to 2 minutes on the hook. So the main content needs to be the majority of your time. And then in your closing, your audience needs to know exactly what you want them to do. When you close, they need to know, we would like for you to come and support our mission and this event. So they need to know in the closing what it is that you're asking of them. So again, 1 to 2 minutes on your closing. It needs to be simple and you need to convey what it is that you're asking this group to do for you. So in asking that, any of your organizations have someone that goes out and does presentations for you? Carla, do you guys have a spokesperson, one person that goes out and would do a brief presentation?
However, if we are at any kind of events, we do, Grace will usually stand up and say something.
Okay.
Or someone will.
Okay. So you do Grace.
Specific person
Okay, that might be something that we would recommend that you talk about. You know, as you go back and you talk to them about this training, that you actually have 1 or 2 people that have that actual presentation. And so Grace is your president, and Grace normally does that, but you might have a couple of people assigned. Blaze, do you or Mamie have somebody that just goes out and, like, do you have somebody that talks at your legislative breakfast for the, Blaze does?
She's not there, I do.
Okay, all right. And what about Chewy? Do you guys have anybody assigned that goes out? No. Okay, it'd probably be a good idea for you guys to have somebody on board that's willing to do that. Now, it does not have to be a board member. It can be one of your community members that's comfortable in going out and speaking. You know, you're just talking about 5 or 10 minutes, but they do need to know the mission and the purpose of your organization and need to be willing to do that. So it's just a good idea to have somebody, like I said, if they need to, maybe they need to come before the tribal council and ask for something. Maybe they need to, again, go before the Chamber of Commerce or the Kiwanis in the area. So it's just a good idea when you're doing a brief presentation to have a couple of people that are willing to do that. And it would be just a little bit more formal than, of course, the shopping cart speech. Okay, do you guys have any questions so far? Anything at all? All right. Written communications. Okay. Personal correspondence. Postcards. Now, I have actually seen some postcards that the Stewell Friends of the Library has sent out. How many of you, by show of hands, actually do postcards or letters? Okay, so a few of you. It is so important, guys, to put this little personal component in. You know, when somebody has donated to your organization, done something, even of their time, it is really good to take time just to put a little postcard in the mail and, you know, let them know. Does your organization use these regularly? How often and for what? Again, a postcard is not a real expensive way. It's not as expensive to mail out a postcard as it is a letter. So, you know, try to utilize the postcards if you can. You can put information on them about any upcoming events, good news to share to your community, thanking volunteers for helping for recent events. There's just many ways that you can use a postcard. The post office does have a mailer that you can do, and you can send it out to a certain zip code. So, you know, possibly you want to really do a mass mailing. You really want to tell all the community about maybe you're having an annual event and you really want to get the word out. So, you know, you can go through your local post office, and it has to be a certain size postcard, and they'll give you that. They have a packet. So that might be one way that you think about getting your word out is, you know, possibly by sending some postcards out that tell about events or just sharing your good news. Again, here's some more ways. Surveys. You know, really it's important to know what it is that your community wants, how they feel. So sending a postcard out is a really good way to do some surveys. Help your community members feel like they're participating. You would like to know what they, you know, how they feel, what they want. So getting them involved because they feel like they're asking me what it is how I feel. What do I want? Be sure you have general consensus among your community members about your plans. We've talked in the past about, you know, if you don't have the community's buy-in, you're not going to be successful. So a postcard is a way to communicate. Send out a survey, they can mail it back into you, and you can find out how they feel or what the programs are that they would like for your organization to do. So, this is also a way, if you're getting ready to apply for any grants, maybe you need some information from your community in order to apply for that grant. So again, a postcard is just a really good way to send out to your community and get an evaluation, get some surveys done on what it is that your community needs or what they want. Okay, another way would be just thank you cards. Again, we've talked about postcards. Now we're going to talk about just simple thank you cards. For any funder, it is always good for you to send them some type of thank you. A card goes a long way. I know for us in the CAUTA office, when we get a card in the office, we pass that card around to every staff member, and then we hang it on our bulletin board. It really makes us feel good that we have done something to help our community organizations. A funder will be the same way. So, you know, please take the time to have someone that will send out thank you cards or even a personal letter thanking a funder or thanking someone that has helped your organization. So, you know, just take the time to do that. You know, volunteers, if they get a card like that, they're going to be more willing to come back in the future because they're going to think they really appreciated what I did. They appreciated my time. So we just can't emphasize enough that sending a little thank you card or a personal letter, how much it means. Be sure that if you do send a personal letter, though, that you can read it, that the handwriting, you know, that you can read it. Maybe you want to type it on a computer, but be sure and sign it, you know, with your personal signature. Announcements. Again, media can be free if you plan ahead. There are many, many newspapers, media that will put your announcement out for free, but you do need to get it to them in advance. So find out what those deadlines are and try to get your word out through the media. Many radio, television, and local papers will make free public service announcements for community-based organizations. When you're doing that, you always want to let them know we are a nonprofit organization. When you say you're a nonprofit organization, they realize that you don't have a whole lot of funds, and they're going to be more willing to help you put that announcement in and either maybe cut the cost of that announcement or maybe not charge you at all. So having the nonprofit 501c3 helps you with this as well. You must plan ahead to meet the requirements, again, of media. We've talked about this a couple of times. You need to get the contact information for your local newspaper. You need to have that on hand at all times. You need to know what their required format is. For a newspaper, if you pretty much already have the article typed up, they'll publish it. If they have to take the information and retype it, it's probably not going to get put in the paper. So if you already have it in the format that the newspaper is going to post it or the media outlet, then that is going to help you in getting that published quicker. Know their broadcast or publication deadlines. Again, if you get it to them on Tuesday and their deadline was Monday, it is not going to be in the paper that week. Whose fault is that? It's yours. So know their deadlines. Know them ahead of time so that you can meet that and get that announcement out. Have a notebook made to collect this information. You know, whoever does this, I don't know if it would be your secretary. You may just have someone assigned to do this like we talked about. But, you know, make up a notebook of all the different newspapers and radios that you may want to communicate through and just have that readily available whenever you need it. Printed one-page announcements may sometimes be printed in local store windows. So again, we're kind of talking about flyers here. And I know a lot of you create flyers with your computers and post those in your local stores, put them around, pass them out at school. School is a wonderful venue, you know, if you can print out enough flyers to send home. I will tell you, though, that I think that if you send it home with grade school kids, they'll take it home. If you try to send flyers home with middle school or high school, they might not make it to the house. So think about what it is that you're trying to convey, or you could be wasting your resources. So, but usually schools are happy if you copy them and give them enough to get those announcements out for you as well.
Sometimes at schools, it's better to see, like at our school, the elementary sends home on Friday evenings, an announcement sheet for the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And we have found that that's more effective if it's on that sheet, because that's something that the parents will probably try to do, get on a separate sheet.
Okay.
Because a lot of things don't make it home. And we can't staple this information to the kids' clothes anymore. We used to back in the old days when you taught, you could pin it to them. So the parents at least notice that something needed to be done. But
Right.
a lot of times, it doesn't make it to the parents.
Okay, so what she said was that basically their school sends home at the end of the week on Fridays announcements for the week. And so your school is willing then to take an announcement and put it in that flyer, and it's more likely that that's going to get home with the student. So very good. And I'm sure if each of you would talk to your local schools, they might be willing and happy to do something like that as well. That's a very good idea to send that home on Fridays with the students. So very good. All right, articles. You can usually get newspapers and magazines to publish articles about your group as long as you write them yourself. Again, you need to write it yourself. If you have it in the format, they're more likely to publish it for you if it's already written. So, yes, ma'am. Well, you need to get with each, like if it's the newspaper, you need to ask them how they want it. And yes, normally they're going to put it in a column. Now, it might be different in a magazine or something like that. So that's something that you need to find out from the media source that you're going to be using. And so what format do they want it in? What font do they want it in? Things like that. Do they want it electronically? Do they want it handwritten? We are getting to a new age to where sometimes if you put it on a flash drive, it may be easier for them to download. Some newspapers, they accept email now. They'll accept an email. But again, you need to check with that media source to see how they want to accept it. What is the best way for you to send that article? But again, if you already have it written, you're going to have a better chance of them publishing it for you. Newspapers. Usually they publish shorter articles about specific events. Sometimes publish longer articles about the organization itself. If you're having a very big event, maybe it's your annual event and you're going to have a large crowd, take time in advance to contact your local newspaper. Invite them to come. They may want to do a story on the event that you're having. Again, that's getting the word out about your organization. So anytime you're having a big annual event or a big event, try to invite somebody from the news media to come out. Ask them. You never know when they might come out and do a larger article on your organization and about the event that you're having. So again, just think about that. Think about inviting that media source out. Even radio stations will sometimes come out and broadcast at an event. So always think about the media, think about how you're going to get the word out. Any kind of newspaper, that's going to help you with funders. Because you've got that now. Stillwell Public Library friends, they have a book that is probably 3 inches thick of newspaper articles because they're very good at getting their events in the media. So just always think about that. Think about inviting them to come out to your event whenever you're having an event. Has anybody ever done that? Has anybody ever invited the media out and they actually came and broadcast one of your events? Well, that's something I would highly recommend because, again, a lot of times, even the Cherokee Phoenix, they're always looking for good stories to put in the newspaper. And they have would love to hear about something good that is going on in your community. So again, I'm not trying to advertise for the Cherokee Phoenix, but you guys need to utilize your resources and see if they wouldn't be willing to come out and possibly do a story on your organization to get the word out. Did you have a question? When you had open house, you had the newspaper? Yeah. Open houses are a wonderful way to get the word out about your organization, especially if you're having an open house, it's new. But remember to bring them out again. Just when you're having, invite them once in a while to your legislative day. Just invite them to the events. Again, they're always looking for good ways to have something to put in their paper. So always think about that. How to get your articles published. Again, check with your local newspaper or regional magazines to see what their article submission policies are. Find out their deadlines, requirements for their submission, and the length, how long they want it to be, and their preferred style. Ask about what they're required for photos. If you want to send photos, some of them need specific type of photos, digital format. Do they need permission forms? Whoever's in the picture may need to sign a permission form for their photo to be used. So those are things you always need to think about. Maybe you need to put captions like the names, the positions of the people that are in the picture, things like that. Pictures speak loudly. People like to see pictures. So again, I know that some of our organizations are very good about taking pictures and putting those in their newspaper. So always think about that. Think about taking those photos and then helping the newspaper out by letting them know who's in the picture and maybe their board position or the title. Just a suggestion, you might want to work with a journalism class at your local high school or college. They may, need to put in some time writing some articles. So you might check with your local college or your high school to see if they have someone. They may have somebody that wants to come out and do some photography. So it's just another source. It says get a librarian to help you find publications. Well, we have some librarians here with us, so utilize those resources. Keep a scrapbook for the organization. Again, I have seen some of our large organizations are very good as well at keeping scrapbooks, and those are just very informative, and people really like to use that. Funders, you might have an opportunity to show that scrapbook to a funder. And if they have a scrapbook that's 3 or 4 inches, they're going to really know that this organization does a lot. But if they just have 2 or 3 pictures, it's not a whole lot for them to look at. So think about keeping some type of a scrapbook for your organization. It may help you in the future. Brochures. How many of you, by show of hands, actually have a brochure about your organization? Okay. Brochures, now that we have computers, they can be made so easily. You can make them in your own home. You can print them out in your own home, and they're less expensive. So brochures are a good form of information and advertising. The trifold is a really good one. You can just use one sheet of paper and do the trifold. You can put a lot of information on the back, the front, and the inside. So, you might think about doing that. We do have people in our office that may be able to help you with a design, to help you design a brochure or something like that. So just something to think about, to have those on hand for your events. You definitely would want your mission in there. You would want contact information if someone's interested in volunteering or getting to know about your organization. So we strongly, would like to suggest that you guys try to make some type of a brochure to hand out. Common purposes for your nonprofit would be good to put on there. Again, this is an advertisement. You might want to tell about your fundraising drives that you do and announce new service projects that might be coming up. So these are just more ways that you could utilize one of those brochures. This is just talking about more of a layout. Again, you know, if you use one page, you can tri-fold it front and back, however you would like to. There's just many ways that you can make a brochure to look nice. All right, narratives. You often want to tell stories that are compelling about your organization. Again, something that is going to touch their heart. So for your narrative, stories that are compelling. You want to gain support for your funders. You need to be able to tell the story of your organization effectively. So narratives are very good, telling that compelling story about your organization, how you touch the heart of children, or how you, if you've got a food pantry, how many people that you're feeding, maybe a little bit about your guidelines, something like that. So now grant narratives are just a little bit different. You have to look at each specific grant that you might be applying for. You need to read through that grant thoroughly so that you know exactly what it is that they are asking of you. Some grants, if you don't follow step by step, then when they receive it, if it's not in the exact format that they've asked and you haven't answered exactly the questions, they'll throw it in the trash, especially for federal grants. So grant narratives, you really want to be very, very specific in what you're putting in that grant narrative. It's a special kind of story about your organization when you're applying for funding from an agency or an institution. And some of your organizations may not be ready yet to apply for the larger grants, but I do know that some of you are. I know that maybe you guys, was it Sarkey's Foundation that you had applied for? Can you tell us just a little bit about what that took? Chris, do you have the mic? I know that's been a while back, but there was a little bit in depth in writing that grant, wasn't there, for Sarkey's?
I think it took about 3 years to get the Sarkey grant.
Okay.
We visited with them by phone, and then we went to see them. I think the first year they said, we don't give for buildings. And then the second year they said, we don't have any money this year, or whatever. And then the third year, we went to see them in their offices at Edmond. And I think we made 3 trips over there to just visit with Susan. Anyway, we visited with them, and in the third year they gave us $60,000, but it still was not for a building. It was for shelving, and then we didn't have the money with our REAP grant to do the front door, and we wrote a request, and then they bought the front door for us. But I think I'm going to ask them again. We're doing real well on our garden park. Is coming along. We've talked with the county commissioner who will do the in-kind dirt work, and after we get it started and get the paperwork all in place, I want to go back to Sarkey because I want a stage for performing arts. So I hope that we can go back and get money for that. It won't be anything like the amount that we got the first time.
Right.
But if we can get some help on that park, it would be a big help for us.
Very good.
So it takes a while. It took 3 years to get that Sarkey grant.
Right. So what I heard from her is basically they were persistent. They kept going back to that grant foundation over and over again for 3 years, and it finally paid off. And, since they developed a good relationship with that funder, they may be able to go back again. And I do know that Stillwell Library is applying for the Sarkeys this year. Do you know very much about that grant process? I know that they've been working on that. you've gotten it submitted. But your whole board kind of talked about it and was involved in that process and putting the story together and communicating. Yes. So, I mean, to really get your word out there and apply for those big grants, you have to be persistent. You may be told no the first time, but you want to continue communicating. You want to continue asking and letting people know what your mission, what your purpose, and what your goal is, and what it is that you're asking for. So, you know, grant narratives, you want to tell your story, but again, for a grant that you're writing, you need to really read it over, read it again, find out what they're asking for. And you want to write your narrative along the lines that's going to help you with that particular grant. So again, grant narratives are just very, very important. Okay, guys, we have kind of finished very early. I wanted to run through this quickly, but I do want to ask, do you guys have any questions about communicating? Do you have any questions about anything that's going on right now with your organization as far as doing advertising, communicating, anything like that? That we can. So you have never submitted? Okay. Chris is bringing the mic real quick.
I have always avoided the newspaper and the press because I've had a bad experience. But I will call the Tahlequah Press and see what's required,
Okay.
and start doing that, and maybe call the radio as well. And because if anyone in our organization is going to do it, it's going to be me, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd better find out what they want and get on it, because I have said all the time I'm not doing it, but I will.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever done a mailer to your community?
Yes.
And didn't you guys do like an evaluation one time that you partnered with? Tell us a little bit about that. You partnered with some other organizations in your community to do an evaluation, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we went to the post office and we got their mailing, whatever that large mailing is.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I remember that came out of that, the people in Hulbert really would like recycle. Mm-hmm. It came out that was the most they wanted that one most. I can't remember the other questions at the time, but we have not acted on that. I think Tahlequah has, and I would like to get with them and see if we could join them in that effort. But we have not gotten a recycle plant at all.
Okay. So, you know, maybe follow through, bring that up again. If your community asks for it, you need to start having some forums or something like that, get the community involved and see how they could help to get that recycling thing started. But, you know, if you guys went to the effort to actually do that mail out, then I recommend that you follow through with some of those things and maybe think about doing another one. The community will probably be less likely to answer it if you didn't follow through with the things on the first one. So
one thing that did come out of that survey, because I think we identified the top three things, and it was recycling. They wanted a splash pad, and Hulbert is getting a splash pad.
okay.
You know, and it's taken a few years,
Mm-hmm.
but it focused. It helped people focus on and looking at the community. That's what I think the best value that we got out of it was that people started actually looking at the community instead of just accepting the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
That they've started looking like, what can we do to make it better? Not everybody, but a lot of people have.
Right.
You know, so I think it was a good first step. And
Okay.
it helped that we worked with two other organizations in Hulbert,
Mm-hmm.
or in that part of the county, to raise awareness, if
Very
nothing
good.
else.
So you sat down, the three organizations sat down and you decided what questions were going to be on that postcard, and you came together and that's what you mailed out.
Well, it was a one-page form.
Okay.
And, you know, I mean, it started, you know, most surveys start out and they're multi-pages. And, you know, if you get one in the mail that's that long, are you actually going to answer it? So we had to get very, very practical and get down to just a few questions. And but they were the important questions.
Very good.
Right. And so it was like, okay. And then do the tabulating, because we couldn't do it by computer. We actually had to do it by hand. We're not
Right.
that sophisticated yet. So, but I think it spawned some conversations and so forth. So it was worth it. And I can't remember the percentage now, but I think we got a fairly good percentage back. You know, everybody wants 100%. Well, you're never going to get 100%.
Right.
But if you get anything above 10%, I think you've done good.
Yes.
And we sent out, for our zip code, I think there was about 2,000.
Very good.
So,
Very good. So how did you receive those back? Did you have a return postage on those cards? How did the community get those back to you? And I'm assuming you used one specific address for those to come back in?
there was 2 ways. They could bring them back in and leave them, I think, at the water office when they paid their bill, or they could mail them back to us.
Very good. Very good. So you need to think about all that. Again, when you're doing your planning, when you did the planning for that mail out, you need to think about that. You know, what are we doing? What are the questions we need to narrow this down to? And again, you know, how are we going to calculate when these come back in? But again, very, very important that you learned what it was your community wanted. And yes, it takes time, but you have been able within a couple of years to help in making those things successful that they were asking for. So again, for your communities, it's very good to know what it is that your community wants, but you need to have a good plan of communicating, getting the word out to them, but then receiving the word back. And how are you going to calculate that, and who is going to do it? So again, having your good plan for communicating is very, very important. Okay, any other questions? How many of you have a Facebook page for your organization? How many of you have a website? Okay. How often do you update your website? So again, very important. And again, that's something that CAUTA can help you with. And I'm going to put his name out there, Kevin Stretch. Kevin is very good with social media. So is Chris and Paul. I'm not so much myself, but I can try to help. But again, it is very imperative that you get the word out. You can do evaluations on your web page or on your Facebook page. And so, you know, that's a very cost-effective way to communicate with the public. You know, a lot of people get, what's it called when Facebook, you get an alert? What's that?
Notification.
Notification. So you can get notifications, and see, I don't know these social media things as well as the younger people do, but that is a very, very good resource for every one of your organizations to use to get the word out and to communicate about your events, and you know, even to do a survey over your web page or through your Facebook page and get responses from your community that way. So you guys just be open, and I know a lot of your organization have been around for a few years, but it never hurts to try new means to communicate, new ways, and to get people involved, maybe people that didn't know about your organization. So, you know, try those new ways, try those new media avenues that you can use to get your word out and to communicate. So, any questions at all? Anything at all? Maybe it doesn't have to do with our module training today. Do you have any questions that we could help you with for your organization? We did a fundraising training about a month ago. How's that going? Any new fundraisers started?
Well, I have a question though. If we missed training,
Yes.
how do we go back in?
Basically,
those.
let me explain. We are now filming our trainings, so they are archived under our webpage under Cherokee.org. And if you have missed one of our curriculum trainings, you can go in and pull that up at any time, your convenience, and watch that training. You will get TA credit hours for it if you answer the evaluation or email one of our staff, Chris, myself, any of us. Let us know who the presenter was, what the topic was, and maybe one thing that you learned about that training. And that way we'll know that you watched the training and we can give you your TA credit hours. But every training is now filmed. We also do a cultural presentation once a month. That's the second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. Those are archived as well. And those are wonderful cultural presentations that you can sit down with your organization and let people know they can watch it from the convenience of their own home. So again, those are archived and we do new ones every month. We welcome you to log on and watch those trainings. And it's very exciting to us that we are now able to do that live and online and then archive those for our community members. So appreciate you asking about that. So any other questions before we conclude today? Okay, so she's asking about the post office. Basically, yes, you can go to your local post office and let them know that you're an organization and who the target audience is. You may not want to hit your whole zip code. You may want to do it within like a certain school district or whatever the boundaries are of your organization, and your local post office will be able to help you narrow down those boundaries. They do have a special postage, they have a packet, and you do have to make the flyer a certain size, and they will let you know that information at your local post office, and they will give you a discounted rate for that bulk mailing.
But right where I'm at, it's like there's a Westville, a Watts, and a Proctor.
Right, so again, you would need to let your local post office know what boundaries you are trying to target, what the boundaries are for Chewy, and your post office will help you to narrow that down, because you may not want to reach all the way up to Watts, but then again, you might want to. You might be doing a fundraiser or something that you want their input. So again, your local post office will be able to help you with those boundaries and narrowing that mailing out to those particular places.
Proctor's got a community building. Watts has got one, and
Correct.
Westville does too.
Right.
You know.
And that's why every organization that is within the 14 counties normally has boundaries in their bylaws that are set, because you don't really want to cross over with those other organizations. And so I'm sure that you have boundaries that are set in your bylaws that are clear. I don't, without looking at your bylaws, I don't know what your boundaries are. But again, your local postmaster, I'm sure, would be willing to help you narrow that boundary down so that you don't send out a mailer to people that are not in your community. So, but, really, I'm not sure what the cost of that is, but it is really reduced from the cost of doing a normal letter. So always check with your local post office to see if they have a bulk mailing rate, and let them know that you are a nonprofit organization again. And so it will save you a lot of money in the long run.
And they will refund any money that you put it in a fund, I think. Isn't that right? You have to put the money for postage into a fund with them. And if you don't use all of it, they will refund it to you.
Okay, so you set aside so much money, and then if it's not all utilized, they'll refund it. Very good, very good. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you all coming today and sitting through our training. Basically, you know how to get in touch with us. And so if you need anything, if you have any questions that we can help you with, just feel free to give us a call at any time, and we'll help you. I know that everybody is thinking about TA hours right now that live within the 14 county. If you need to know what your TA hours are to date, give myself or Chris a call, or Mark Parman, and we can let you know. If we need to come out and do a little bit more individualized training with you guys, we're happy to do that to help you guys get your TA hours in. Yes, ma'am.
Are you counting TA hours from October 1st to September 30th, or is it a calendar year?
October to
Okay.
September. Yes, that is our year. And so any trainings that you have attended, again, it's really important that you sign our sign-in sheets, or if you go online and watch our trainings, you need to do the evaluation or email Chris or myself or call us and let us know that you watched that training. Again, just give us a little bit of information and we will give you the credit for the time spent.
I did evaluate online that last annual meeting that Dan had,
Okay.
and I got a little bit credit for that, so I just also, I had two of us presenters that I
Okay.
thought that were the rest of the
Okay, so you're talking about our conference? Okay. Yes, and our conference evaluations are still online on our website at www.cherokee.org/CCO. And for anybody that did not fill out their evaluation, they can still go online and do that. Or if you don't have access to the internet, give Chris or myself a call when we're in the office and we will help you do that so that you can get your credit for those TA hours for the conference. Again, evaluations are very important to us as well. We have to know how you feel, how you like our trainings. Chris handed you an evaluation when you came in the door, so Mark Parman will not let me come back in the office if I don't bring those back. So if you all would please just take a few moments to fill out that evaluation. And for those that are online, basically we will have that evaluation available. Please complete those and submit those and send those back. And just let us know your comments and how you feel about the training. And again, we really appreciate you guys coming today and the ones that came online to watch us. And we'll see you guys again next month. So thank you for coming.